They say the moment you give birth is the moment you meet the love of your life. For Amelia Hayes, it was the moment she met the monster she had married. While she lay on a hospital bed, her body locked in a life-or-death struggle to bring their child into the world, her husband, Julian Croft, wasn't holding her hand. He wasn't pacing in the waiting room. He was in a 5-star hotel suite across town, toasting to their future with his mistress. He made a choice that night, confident his wife was too weak to ever fight back. He had no idea he wasn't just abandoning a wife. He was creating a queen, forged in fire and betrayal, who would come back to claim his entire kingdom. This is the story of how one woman's darkest hour became her greatest source of strength, and how she took back everything and more. Amelia Hayes believed she had the perfect life, the kind that filled the glossy pages of magazines she'd stopped reading. Their home, a marvel of glass and white stone nestled in the affluent hills of Calabasas, California, offered panoramic views of a world that seemed to belong to them. Her husband, Julian Croft, was the architect of this world. He was the celebrated founder and CEO of Croft Innovations, a tech firm whose latest app, Synapse, had revolutionized data management and made him a Silicon Valley demigod. To the outside world, Julian was a visionary, a charismatic leader with a brilliant smile and a seemingly endless well of ambition. To Amelia, for the first 5 years of their marriage, he was simply her Julian. He was the man who'd once quoted Shakespeare to her in a dusty university library, the man who'd promised her a partnership in every sense of the word. She had been a promising art historian on the cusp of a prestigious curatorial career. But Julian's dream had become their shared dream. She had put her own ambitions aside to support his hosting endless dinner parties for investors proofreading late-night proposals and providing the stable, serene home life that allowed him to conquer the corporate world. She had been the silent, uncredited co-founder of his peace of mind. Now, at 34, she was 9 months pregnant with their first child, a daughter they had decided to name Lily. The nursery was a masterpiece of soft pinks and creams, with a hand-painted mural of a blooming garden on one wall, a project Amelia had poured her heart into during the long, lonely months of her 3rd trimester. Lately, those months had felt lonelier than ever. Julian's work emergencies had become more frequent, his nights at the office longer. When he was home, he was distant, his mind seemingly tethered to the blue glow of his phone. He'd kiss her swollen belly, whisper promises of how everything would be perfect once the baby arrived. But his eyes were elsewhere. "It's just the stress of the Q4 launch, darling," he'd say, stroking her hair without truly seeing her. "Everything is riding on this. After Lily is born, I'll take a month off. Just the 3 of us." Amelia wanted to believe him. She chalked her gnawing anxiety up to hormones, to the natural fears of a first-time mother. But a small, cold knot of dread was tightening in her chest. She saw the way he'd angle his phone away from her, the generic names that would flash on the screen at 11 p.m. Admin, logistics. She'd once caught a glimpse of a text message, a string of heart emojis next to a name she didn't recognize, Isabella. When she'd asked, he had laughed it off. "Isabella Vance. She's my new COO. A real shark, but essential for the Asian market expansion. You know how these corporate types are all about the emojis. It's meaningless." He was so smooth, so convincing that she had allowed herself to be reassured. She was carrying his child. He was building their empire. She was being paranoid. On a Tuesday evening in late October, the dread became a chilling reality. Amelia was arranging a tiny pair of booties in the nursery when the first contraction hit her a sharp, breathtaking clench that radiated from her lower back. She steadied herself against the crib, her heart hammering. It was time. She called Julian. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice hurried and distracted, the clinking of glasses audible in the background. Amelia. Is everything okay? I'm in the middle of a dinner with the Tokyo investors. Julian. My water broke, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The contractions are about 15 minutes apart. My sister is on her way to take me to the hospital. But I need you. I need you to meet me there. There was a pause. She could hear him muttering something to someone else, his hand likely cupped over the receiver. Okay, darling. Don't panic. Go with Sarah. I'll wrap this up as quickly as I can. It's just incredibly sensitive timing. I'll be there. I promise. His voice lacked the urgency she so desperately needed to hear. It was the voice of a man being inconvenienced, not a father about to meet his child. Her sister Sarah, a fiercely protective ER nurse, arrived minutes later, her face a mixture of excitement and concern. She took one look at Amelia's pale expression and knew. He's not coming, is he? Sarah asked, her tone flat as she grabbed the hospital bag. He said he'd meet us there, Amelia replied, trying to sound convinced. It's a big investor dinner. He'll come. But as Sarah drove them toward Cedars-Sinai, and the contractions intensified into relentless crashing waves, Amelia's phone remained silent. Julian wasn't coming, and deep down in a place she had refused to look, she knew exactly where he was. He wasn't with investors from Tokyo. He was with Isabella. The perfect life was a lie, and the walls of her gilded cage were beginning to crumble. The labor and delivery room at Cedars-Sinai was a sterile beige box, its coldness a stark contrast to the searing pain that ripped through Amelia's body. The rhythmic beeping of the fetal heart monitor was the only constant in a world that had dissolved into a haze of agony and fear. Sarah was a godsend, a calm, steady presence who coached her breathing, wiped her brow, and held her hand in a vice grip during the worst of the contractions. Every time the door opened, Amelia's head would snap up, a desperate hope flaring in her chest, only to be extinguished when a nurse or doctor walked in. She'd checked her phone a dozen times. No missed calls, just a single text from Julian sent over an hour ago. Things are running late. Hang in there. Almost done. He's a liar, Sarah muttered, her voice laced with fury as she dipped a cloth in ice water. What kind of man does this? Amelia didn't answer. She didn't have the strength. The pain was all-consuming. Dr. Evans, a kind-faced obstetrician with weary eyes, told her she was progressing well. You're doing great, Amelia. We should be ready to push soon. Is your husband on his way? The question felt like a physical blow. He's stuck in a meeting, Amelia whispered, the shame burning her cheeks. Meanwhile, across town, Julian Croft was not in a meeting. He was sliding a key card into the door of a penthouse suite at the Chateau Marmont. The room was bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, and the air smelled of champagne and expensive perfume. Isabella Vance, his sleek, ambitious COO, turned from the window overlooking the city lights. She was wearing a silk robe that did little to hide the lithe figure underneath. Are you sure you should be here? She asked, a smirk playing on her lips as she took his briefcase. Shouldn't you be performing your fatherly duties? The sister is with her, Julian said, loosening his tie as he walked toward her. Amelia is strong. She can handle it. This Tokyo deal is the final piece of the puzzle. Once it's secured, we can move on to the next phase. Isabella wrapped her arms around his neck, her eyes gleaming with a cold, predatory light. And what phase is that, Julian? The phase where I'm free, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The divorce. Once the baby is here, the optics are better. The dutiful husband sees his wife through the pregnancy, but they tragically grow apart. I'll give her a generous settlement, the house a handsome alimony. She'll be comfortable for life. Lily will be taken care of, and she won't make a fuss. She's not a fighter. He believed it. Amelia had always been the gentle one, the peacemaker. She avoided confrontation at all costs. He was counting on that weakness. And what about my settlement? Isabella purred, tracing a finger down his chest. I expect more than just a nice house. You'll be by my side, he promised, kissing her. Executive Vice President. A seat on the board. We'll run the empire together. His phone buzzed on the marble countertop. It was a text from Sarah. Where the hell are you, Julian? Her blood pressure is dropping. The doctor is worried. Julian glanced at it, his expression hardening with annoyance. Drama. Everything with Amelia and her sister was always drama. He typed a quick reply. On my way now. Traffic is a nightmare. He then switched his phone to silent and tossed it onto the bed. He had no intention of leaving. This night was not about the end of Amelia's pregnancy. It was about the beginning of his new life with Isabella. The deal with the Tokyo investors was a lie, a convenient excuse. The real deal was being sealed right here in this room. Back at the hospital, the situation had turned dire. As Amelia prepared to push, a sudden catastrophic shift occurred. She let out a sharp cry, not of pain, but of confusion. I can't breathe. Her eyes rolled back. The heart monitor, once steady, began to shriek a high-pitched, terrifying alarm. Dr. Evans' face went grim. Her oxygen saturation is plummeting. She's cyanotic. Sarah, drawing on all her nursing experience, recognized the terrifying symptoms. It's an embolism, isn't it? She choked out, her blood running cold. Looks like it. Amniotic fluid in the bloodstream. The doctor confirmed, his voice, urgent and commanding. Code blue. Get me a crash cart in here now. We need to get this baby out, and we need to save the mother. Move. The room exploded into a controlled chaos of medical professionals. They were losing her. Sarah, pushed to the side, fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She called Julian. It went straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She sent one last frantic text, her thumbs flying across the screen, hoed blue. Amelia is dying. They think it's an embolism. Her heart may stop. If you are a human being, you will get here now. In the penthouse suite, as Julian poured another glass of champagne, his phone lay face down on the silk sheets, its screen dark and silent. He had made his choice. As his wife fought for her life and the life of their unborn child, he was celebrating the future he was building on the ashes of his family. He was blissfully unaware that the woman he had dismissed as weak was currently surviving the unsurvivable, and that in the crucible of that hospital room, the gentle art historian was being burned away, leaving behind something forged of steel and ice. Amelia was floating in a dark, silent void. There was no pain, no fear, just a profound and unsettling peace. Distant voices echoed, as if from the other side of a thick wall. No pulse. Starting compressions. Charge to 200. The words were meaningless fragments of a world she no longer inhabited. She felt a gentle pull, a beckoning toward an even deeper, more permanent silence. It would be so easy to let go. Then through the darkness, another sound pierced the veil. It was a cry, a tiny, furious, life-affirming wail. Lily. The sound was an anchor, a rope thrown into the abyss. Amelia clung to it with a ferocity she didn't know she possessed. The image of the nursery, the tiny booties, the garden she had painted on the wall, it all flooded back. She had to get back. She had to meet her daughter. With a monumental effort that felt like swimming against a tidal wave, she fought her way back toward the voices, back toward the pain. Her first conscious sensation was a raw, burning ache in her chest. Her second was the sterile smell of the ICU. Her eyelids fluttered open, heavy as lead shutters. The world was a blurry landscape of white ceilings and blinking machines. Sarah was asleep in a chair beside her bed, her face etched with exhaustion and streaked with dried tears. Sarah Amelia's voice was a dry, raspy whisper. Her sister's head shot up. Her eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot widened. First with shock, then with overwhelming relief. Amelia. "Oh my God, you're awake!" Sarah rushed to her side, grabbing her hand gently. "Don't try to talk too much. You've been through hell." Over the next few hours, Sarah pieced together the nightmare for her. Amniotic fluid embolism, a 1 in a million catastrophe. Her heart had stopped for nearly 4 minutes. It was a miracle she was alive, and an even bigger miracle that she had no apparent brain damage. And Lily, delivered via emergency C-section during the chaos, was a perfectly healthy, beautiful baby girl waiting for her in the NICU. Amelia absorbed the information, a profound sense of dislocation settling over her. She felt like a ghost, a spectator to her own life and near death. And then she asked the question that had been hovering at the edge of her consciousness. "Where is Julian?" Sarah's face, which had been alight with relief, instantly shuttered a mask of cold fury taking its place. "Don't worry about him right now. You just focus on getting better." "Sarah, tell me." Her sister hesitated, then let out a long, shaky breath. He showed up. About 3 hours after the code blew. Strolled in, smelling of champagne and perfume, asking what all the fuss was about. Amelia's heart, the same heart they had shocked back to life, felt like it was cracking in two. "I told him," Sarah continued, her voice trembling with rage. "I told him you had almost died, that Lily had almost died. Do you know what he did, Amelia?" He ran a hand through his stupid, perfect hair and said, "Well, the important thing is that they're both okay now, right?" He stayed for 10 minutes, looked at his daughter through the glass of the NICU, and then said he had to go handle the fallout from his cancelled meeting. Each word was a nail being hammered into the coffin of the love Amelia once felt. But the final devastating blow came from an unexpected source. As Sarah was recounting the story, her phone, which she'd placed on Amelia's bedside table, lit up. A notification from a shared family photo album appeared on the screen. It was a picture Julian had just posted, intended for his family back east, no doubt, to maintain his facade. The picture was of him smiling tiredly, standing beside Lily's incubator. The caption read, "Welcoming my beautiful daughter, Lily Croft, to the world. A harrowing night, but mother and baby are resting. So proud of my incredible wife's strength. Blessed art new dad." Seeing that lie so publicly and shamelessly proclaimed was what did it. The heartbreak, the sorrow, the gut-wrenching pain it all began to cool, to crystallize into something else. It hardened into a cold, clear, diamond-hard resolve. Julian hadn't just been absent. He had made a calculated decision. He had weighed her life and the birth of their child against a night with his mistress, and had chosen the latter. He had then constructed a lie to paint himself as the hero. He thought she was weak. He thought she would break, and then eventually forgive. He was counting on the gentle, accommodating Amelia he had always known. But that Amelia had died on the operating table. The woman who woke up in the ICU was someone new. She was a ghost he had created, and she would haunt him. Later that day, when a nurse finally wheeled her to the NICU, Amelia looked at her daughter for the first time. She saw Lily's tiny, perfect face, her chest rising and falling in the clear plastic box, and she felt a love so fierce and protective it eclipsed every other emotion. It was not a soft, gentle love. It was a warrior's love. "Hello, Lily," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's Mommy. I'm so sorry I'm late. But I promise you I will spend the rest of my life making sure you have everything you deserve. And I will make sure the man who left us in the dark will never see the light again." In that moment, her mission became clear. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming not just her dignity, but her power. Julian had built an empire, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. Amelia knew where he had gotten the blueprints, and she knew where the foundations were buried. The week that followed was a masterclass in deception. When Julian visited, which he did with punctual performative regularity, Amelia played the part he expected. She was the wounded, fragile survivor. She cried softly when he held her hand. She spoke of how scared she had been, and she allowed him to believe her primary emotion was relief that he was there now. "I'm so sorry, Amelia. I feel like a complete failure," he'd say, his voice thick with a counterfeit sincerity that made her stomach turn. "The Tokyo deal. It was make or break. I was trapped. I never would have forgiven myself if something had—" He would trail off, shaking his head as if the thought was too terrible to contemplate. "It's okay, Julian," she would whisper, her voice weak but steady. "All that matters is that we're all safe. Lily is safe." She let him see her as a victim, clinging to the remnants of their family. It was a role she played with chilling precision, his guilt shallow as it was. Made him careless. He saw her fragility as proof of her weakness, and his relief at having dodged a bullet made him blind. He filled her hospital room with extravagant bouquets of lilies. The irony was not lost on her, and talked endlessly about the future. He spoke of the month-long vacation he'd take, the new wing he'd add to the house for a live-in nanny, the trust fund he'd already established for their daughter. He was painting a picture of a perfect future to cover the stench of his betrayal. Amelia would just nod and smile, a ghostly, serene expression on her face. But the moment he left, the real Amelia emerged. The nights in the hospital were long and quiet, punctuated only by the soft hum of machines and the nurses' rounds. With Lily still in the NICU for observation, Amelia had time. Time to think, time to plan, and time to act. Her first call was not to a divorce lawyer. It was to a name she hadn't spoken in years, Evelyn Reed. Evelyn had been her roommate at Stanford, a brilliant, fiercely intelligent woman who had gone on to become one of the most feared intellectual property and corporate litigation attorneys in California. They had drifted apart, but a bond forged over all-night study sessions and cheap pizza remained. "Evie, It's Amelia Hayes. Croft now. There was a moment of surprised silence on the other end of the line. Amelia. My God, it's been a decade. I heard you married the tech wunderkind. Congratulations on the baby. I saw a post. That's what I'm calling about. Amelia said, her voice dropping. I need a lawyer. But not for a divorce. Not yet. I need something more. I need a shark. Evelyn's tone shifted instantly from social to professional. I'm listening. Amelia told her everything. The late nights, the affair with Isabella Vance, the abandonment during the Code Blue, and Julian's pathological lies. But then she got to the heart of the matter. Synapse, Amelia said, naming Julian's flagship app. The core algorithm that drives it. The predictive data sorting architecture. That was mine. Evelyn was silent for a long moment. Explain. Back at Stanford junior year. My thesis was on archival data theory, how to create intuitive pathways for sorting vast, unstructured datasets. Julian was a business major, but he was fascinated by it. We spent an entire semester in the library mapping it out. He handled the business application, the interface, the marketing plan. But the engine, the actual brain of the thing, I wrote the foundational code on my old Dell laptop. Do you have proof, Amelia? Any documentation, emails, drafts, I think. So, Amelia said, a flicker of excitement in her voice. When we moved to the Calabasas house, Julian wanted to throw out all our old college stuff. He called it clutter. I couldn't bear to part with it. I packed it all into boxes and stored them in the attic. My old laptop should be in one of them. And was there any kind of agreement? Anything on paper? Amelia's mind raced back through the years to a late night, fueled by coffee and ambition. Yes, she said, slowly. It sounds stupid now. We were at a diner. We sketched out the whole business concept on a napkin. A 50-50 partnership. We both signed it. He joked about framing it one day. I think I tucked it into one of my old textbooks for safekeeping. A low whistle came down the phone line. A signed napkin can be a legally binding contract, Amelia. If you can find that laptop and that napkin, you don't just have grounds for a divorce settlement. You have a claim to half of Croft Innovations itself. Maybe more if we can prove your intellectual property was the cornerstone of the entire company. The plan began to form elegant and brutal in its simplicity. When Amelia and Lily were discharged a week later, Julian brought them home to a house filled with balloons and a banner that read, "Welcome home, Mummy and Lily." He had even hired a full-time baby nurse, a woman named Clara, to ensure Amelia didn't have to lift a finger. He thought he was being a considerate husband. In reality, he was giving her the one thing she needed most time. While Julian was at the office playing the role of the visionary CEO and carrying on his affair with Isabella Amelia, was in the dusty, sweltering attic. With the unsuspecting Clara watching over Lily downstairs, Amelia methodically searched through box after box of her past life. She found old photo albums, forgotten sweaters, and finally a heavy box labeled Stanford Senior Thesis. Inside, nestled between textbooks on Renaissance art, was a faded Dell laptop, and tucked inside a copy of The Art of Memory was a small square paper napkin from Mel's Diner. The ink was faded, but the words were still clear. A rough flowchart of the synapse concept. At the bottom, 2 signatures, Julian Croft and Amelia Hayes, and the words, partners. 50-50. Always. She booted up the old laptop. It whirred to life, a digital ghost from a more innocent time. And there they were. Dozens of files. Drafts of the algorithm lines of code, time-stamped months before Julian ever filed the incorporation papers for his company. She had it. She had everything. She copied the files onto a new encrypted hard drive. She photographed the napkin, documenting it from every angle before placing it in a bank's safe deposit box, along with the hard drive. She now held the keys to Julian's kingdom. He had left her alone in the dark, and in that darkness she had found a weapon. Now all she had to do was wait for the perfect moment to use it. She would let him climb higher, let his ego swell, let him believe he was invincible. Because the higher he climbed, the more devastating the fall would be. The next 3 months were an exercise in supreme self-control. Amelia healed physically and emotionally, cocooning herself with her daughter. Lily was her world, a source of light and purpose that sharpened her resolve. She watched Julian from a distance, studying him like a scientist, observing a specimen. He was more confident than ever, intoxicated by his own success and the belief that he had successfully navigated the domestic crisis. His affair with Isabella had become bolder. He no longer bothered with discreet late nights at the office. Now it was business trips to Kyoto and conferences in Geneva, from which he would return with expensive gilt-laced gifts for Amelia and a token stuffed animal for Lily's crib. He saw Amelia's quiet acceptance as acquiescence. He mistook her silence for forgiveness, her focus on their daughter for a retreat into domesticity. He had no idea he was living with his own executioner. Behind the serene facade of the new mother, Amelia was working tirelessly with Evelyn Reed. Their meetings were clandestine, conducted via encrypted video calls, while Lily napped or in discreet coffee shops in parts of the city Julian would never frequent. Evelyn was more than just a lawyer. She became Amelia's strategist. She was methodical, ruthless, and utterly brilliant. With the evidence from the laptop and the napkin, she began to build an ironclad case. "This is better than I ever imagined," Evelyn said, during one call, her eyes gleaming as she reviewed the time-stamped code Amelia had recovered. The final patent Julian filed for the synapse algorithm is practically a word-for-word copy of your final thesis draft. He didn't even bother to be creative. His arrogance is our greatest asset. They hired a forensic accountant, a quiet, unassuming man named Mr. Chen, who began to meticulously trace the financial history of Croft Innovations. He uncovered the truth. Julian had used the initial seed money from his father not to develop a new idea, but to productize the fully formed concept Amelia had created. He had built his entire $10 billion empire on a stolen foundation. The strategy they devised was not just about money. It was about narrative. A messy divorce would be spun by Julian's high-priced PR team as the bitter revenge of a scorned wife. They needed to attack the source of his power and identity, his company. "We don't file for divorce," Evelyn explained, her voice sharp and clear. "We file a lawsuit claiming majority ownership and intellectual property theft. We hit him where he lives in the boardroom. We're not asking for a settlement. We're staging a hostile takeover." The plan was to wait for the company's annual shareholder and press conference, an event Julian had christened Innovate Forward. It was his magnum opus, a day-long spectacle where he would unveil the company's future projects and bask in the adoration of the tech world. It was scheduled to take place in 6 weeks. It would be the stage for his greatest triumph, and they would turn it into the site of his public execution. During this time, Amelia began to subtly change. She started working out with a personal trainer, the physical exertion a release for her pent-up fury. The fragile postpartum softness hardened into lean muscle. She cut her long, unassuming hair into a sharp, stylish bob. She traded her soft cardigans for tailored blouses and structured blazers. When Julian noticed, he was pleased. "Look at you, darling," he commented one evening, watching her dress for a charity gala. "You're back. My beautiful wife is back." He thought her transformation was for him a sign that she was moving on from the unpleasantness at the hospital and was ready to resume her duties as his trophy wife. He couldn't have been more wrong. Every change she made was a piece of armor she was adding, preparing for the battle to come. She even played the part of the dutiful wife in public, attending galas on his arm, smiling graciously for the cameras. At one such event, she came face to face with Isabella Vance. The woman was everything Amelia was not: sharp, angular, and radiating a brazen ambition. She gave Amelia a look of dismissive pity, the look a predator gives to something it has already defeated. "Amelia, so lovely to see you out and about," Isabella said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Lily must be such a handful. I don't know how you mothers do it." Amelia met her gaze, a calm, unreadable smile on her face. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "And you're right. Being a mother changes your perspective on everything. You learn what's truly worth fighting for." Isabella simply smirked and walked away, convinced she had won. The final piece of the plan was the most personal. Evelyn advised Amelia to open a new private bank account. Then Amelia began systematically moving funds from their joint accounts into it. Small amounts at first, then larger ones, disguised as expenses for the house for Lily, for charity donations. Julian's ego was so large and his fortune so vast that he never bothered to check the minutiae of their domestic spending. He had delegated that, like everything else concerning his family, to the periphery of his attention. By the eve of the Innovate Forward conference, Amelia had secured a substantial war chest. She had the evidence, the legal team, the strategy, and the financial independence to see it through. That night, Julian came home, buzzing with energy. He was like a child on Christmas Eve. He kissed Amelia, his mind already on the stage, on the applause. "Big day tomorrow, darling," he said, pouring himself a celebratory whiskey. "The biggest of my life. After tomorrow, Croft Innovations will be untouchable." Amelia simply smiled. "I'm sure it will be a day no one will ever forget," she replied, her voice eerily calm. He raised his glass to her. "To us. To the future." "To the future," she echoed, clinking her water glass against his. He had no idea that when he went to sleep that night, he was sleeping next to the architect of his ruin. And when the sun rose, it would be on the last day of his reign. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel was electric. A sea of journalists, investors, and tech industry titans filled the seats, their faces upturned toward the massive stage. A screen spanning the entire wall displayed the sleek, minimalist logo of Croft Innovations. The air thrummed with anticipation. This was Julian Croft's coronation. Backstage, Julian was a coiled spring of manic energy pacing in his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. Isabella was with him, giving his shoulders a final possessive squeeze. "You're going to kill it, Julian," she murmured. "This is your moment." "Our moment," he corrected, giving her a quick, confident kiss. "Once the stock price jumps after today's announcements, we start phasing Amelia out. Everything is falling into place." He strode onto the stage to thunderous applause. The lights hit him, and he beamed, soaking in the adoration. He was a king in his castle, untouchable. He launched into his keynote, his voice booming with charisma, as he painted a picture of a future sculpted by his genius. In a black town car, a block away, Amelia watched a live feed of the event on a tablet. She was dressed in a dark grey power suit, her demeanour as sharp and unyielding as the cut of the fabric. Beside her, Evelyn Reed sat calmly, a leather briefcase resting on her lap. "He's at the apex of his ego," Evelyn noted dryly. "Perfect. How do I look?" Amelia asked, not out of vanity, but as a general checking her armour. "You look like you own the place," Evelyn said, with a thin smile. "Which technically you do." Their timing was calculated to the second. They waited until Julian was deep into his presentation, right at the moment he was unveiling a Synapse 2.0, the next generation of her software. And this revolutionary new platform, Julian declared, his arms spread wide, will secure our place as industry leaders for the next decade. As the applause began to swell, two figures emerged from the side entrance of the ballroom and began walking purposefully down the center aisle. It was Amelia and Evelyn, flanked by two stone-faced process servers. The crowd began to murmur, the ripple of confusion spreading through the room. Who was this woman walking with such authority toward the stage? Julian, blinded by the spotlights, faltered. He squinted, his smile freezing on his face as he recognized his wife. "Amelia, what are you doing here?" he stammered into the microphone, his voice echoing through the silent hall. She didn't answer. She simply walked up the stairs and onto the stage, moving to the center podium, as if she belonged there. Evelyn remained at the foot of the stage, a silent, imposing guardian. The process servers moved to Julian's side. Amelia looked out at the sea of confused, intrigued faces. She ignored her husband completely. "Good morning," she said into the microphone, her voice clear, steady, and amplified throughout the vast room. "My name is Amelia Hayes. Many of you know my husband, Julian Croft, as the visionary founder of Croft Innovations. Today I'm here to correct the record." A collective gasp went through the audience. Julian's face had turned a sickly shade of pale. "Amelia, this isn't the time or the place." "On the contrary, Julian," she said, turning to him for the first time, her eyes like chips of ice. "There has never been a better time or a more appropriate place." She turned back to the audience. "The foundational algorithm for the Synapse platform, the intellectual property upon which this entire company was built, was not created by Julian Croft. It was created by me during my postgraduate studies at Stanford University." The room erupted in a cacophony of shouts and camera flashes. Julian looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. "This is absurd. She's unwell. My wife has been under a great deal of stress." At that moment, the large screen behind them, which had been displaying the Synapse 2.0 logo, suddenly changed. On it, in giant, undeniable resolution, was a scanned image of the diner napkin with its flowchart and two signatures. Partners. 50-50. Always. Then the screen showed dated, time-stamped files from Amelia's old laptop, displaying lines of code side by side with the code from Julian's official patent filing. They were virtually identical. "My attorney, Evelyn Reed." Amelia continued gesturing to the foot of the stage, "has just filed a lawsuit in the Superior Court of California on my behalf. We are not seeking damages. We are seeking a full corporate restructuring to reflect the true ownership of Croft Innovations as stipulated in a pre-incorporation agreement signed by both myself and Mr. Croft." The two process servers stepped forward and handed a thick stack of documents to Julian. His hands trembled as he took them. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape, an ally. He looked at Isabella, who was standing near the wing of the stage, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Her ambition had been hitched to a rising star, and she was now watching it plummet from the sky in a ball of flame. In that moment, her expression shifted from shock to cold calculation. She took a deliberate step back physically and metaphorically, distancing herself from the wreckage. She was already planning her exit strategy. This company was built on a partnership. Amelia's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos. A partnership my husband chose to forget, just as he chose to forget his family on the night his daughter was born and his wife was fighting for her life. That was the final devastating blow. The story now framed not just as corporate theft, but as a profound moral failure was sealed. The journalists were in a frenzy. Amelia looked at Julian, the man she had once loved, now just a hollowed-out shell of arrogance. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was ruined, and he knew it. She leaned into the microphone one last time, her voice devoid of malice, filled only with an unbreakable hard-won strength. The Innovate Forward conference is now concluded. There will be a new direction for this company, a direction based on truth and integrity. Thank you for your time. With that, she turned and walked off the stage, not looking back once. She had not raised her voice. She had not shed a tear. She had simply stated the facts. The king had fallen, and his kingdom was now hers. The fallout from Amelia's public detonation was not merely swift. It was a total system shock collapse of Julian Croft's world. The video of his public humiliation went viral before he had even stumbled off the stage. Tech blogs, financial news networks, and mainstream media outlets feasted on the story, a delectable narrative of hubris, genius theft, and cold-blooded betrayal. Headlines screamed across the internet. Croft's empire of lies, innovate backward. The stolen algorithm. Behind $1 billion fortune, and the one that cut the deepest, CEO abandoned dying wife for Mistress, says family. Julian became a digital ghost overnight. He barricaded himself inside the Calabasas house. Amelia's house, he now realized with a sickening jolt. But there was no escape. His phone was a ceaseless torrent of vitriol from investors' threats of lawsuits, from shareholders, and panicked calls from his now powerless board members. The friends who had once clamored for a seat on his yacht now sent his calls to voicemail. He was radioactive. The final, most intimate betrayal came not from the public, but from Isabella. She didn't even grant him a face-to-face meeting. It was a phone call, her voice as cold and sterile as a surgical instrument. "I'm resigning, Julian," she said without preamble. "My lawyer is drafting a public statement as we speak." "Isabella, don't do this," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "We can fight this. It's her word against mine. We can paint her as unstable." "No, you can do that," she interrupted, her voice devoid of any warmth. "I was your COO, Julian. I was misled just like everyone else. My career will survive this. Hitching my wagon to yours now would be professional suicide. You are a sinking ship, and I am not your lifeboat. After everything, after all our plans," he whispered, the desperation clawing at his throat. "Our plans were predicated on your success, not your scandalous, self-inflicted implosion," she replied. "You let this happen. You underestimated her. That was your mistake, not mine. Goodbye, Julian." The line went dead. He was truly alone, a king standing in the smouldering ruins of a kingdom he had never truly built. The legal battle was less a battle and more a formal surrender ceremony. Julian's team of high-priced, aggressive lawyers, accustomed to blustering their way to favorable settlements, met their match in Evelyn Reed. In a sterile conference room overlooking Century City, Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She simply and methodically laid out her case on the polished mahogany table. First, the original time-stamped code, verified by a team of independent software engineers. Then the signed and notarized napkin, its contractual power affirmed by legal precedent. Finally, she produced sworn affidavits from 2 of Amelia's former Stanford classmates and 1 professor, all of whom recalled her groundbreaking work on the archival data thesis that formed the core of Synapse. "Our case is indisputable," Evelyn stated calmly, folding her hands. "We are prepared to take this to a jury, where the story of Mr. Croft abandoning his wife during a code blue to be with his mistress will be Exhibit A in establishing a pattern of deceitful and unethical character." Julian's lead attorney, a man known for his courtroom theatrics, blanched. He knew a public trial would be a crucifixion. He looked at his client, a hollowed-out man, staring blankly at the wall, and knew the fight was over. The settlement was an execution. Amelia Hayes was awarded a 60% controlling interest in the company. Julian was stripped of his title, his board seat, and his role as founder. He was allowed to keep a minority shareholding, so diminished it was essentially an insult, a constant reminder of the empire he had lost. While the world watched the public dismantling of her husband Amelia, created a sanctuary of peace for herself and her daughter. The news channels were turned off. The papers went unread. Her focus was singular Lily. She spent her days in the quiet rhythm of a new mother, cherishing the small moments, a gurgling laugh, the grip of a tiny hand around her finger. This was the source of her strength. This was the why that had fueled her fight. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about building a safe and honest world for her child. 3 weeks after Julian signed away his kingdom, Amelia prepared for her first official act as its new ruler. Standing before the mirror in her walk-in closet, she bypassed the soft flowing dresses Julian had liked and chose instead a severe, elegant navy blue sheath dress. It was armor. As she fastened a simple pearl necklace, she met her own eyes in the mirror. The frightened, heart-broken woman who had woken up in the ICU was gone. In her place stood someone else, a woman forged in betrayal and remade in resolve. The atmosphere in the Croft Innovations boardroom was funereal. The remaining board members, a clique of aging, silver-haired men, sat in stunned silence, waiting for the arrival of the woman who had single-handedly decapitated their company. They expected a whirlwind of emotion, perhaps a vengeful purge. Amelia entered the room, and a hush fell. She moved with a quiet, deliberate grace, her presence commanding the space more effectively than Julian's ever had, with his boisterous ego. She took the seat at the head of the table, placed her leather portfolio down, and looked at each man in turn, her gaze steady and unblinking. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, her voice even and cool. "As the new majority shareholder, I am calling this meeting to order. I understand this is a period of great uncertainty, so I will be direct." She paused, letting the weight of her authority settle in the room. The era of ego-driven innovation is over. The name Julian Croft is now a liability. Therefore, the first item on the agenda is a complete rebranding. As of today, this company will be known as Lily Innovations. A few of the men shifted uncomfortably in their expensive chairs. One of them, a venture capitalist named Marcus Thorne, cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes, Amelia, with all due respect, a name change of this magnitude is a complex and costly undertaking." Amelia's eyes locked onto his. "With all due respect, Mr. Thorne, the cost of not doing it will be the complete dissolution of this company. We are not just changing a name, we are signaling a fundamental change in our DNA. We are moving from a culture of personality to a culture of principle. She opened her portfolio. I will be assuming the role of acting CEO. My first directive is a full internal audit of all intellectual property. Anyone in this company who has contributed to our success without recognition will be credited and compensated. Our new mission is ethical innovation. We will create products that are not only profitable but also responsible. We will implement industry-leading parental leave policies, create a transparent salary structure to eliminate the gender pay gap, and establish an independent ethics committee with real authority. She looked around the table. Lilly Innovations will be a place where brilliant minds can thrive without fear of their work being stolen by the person in the corner office. We will rebuild trust with our shareholders, our employees, and our customers. You can either be a part of that future, or you can tender your resignations. The choice is yours. There was no argument. There was only the stunned silence of men realizing the rules of the game had irrevocably changed. The months that followed were a whirlwind of focused, relentless work. Amelia proved to be a transformative leader. She was decisive, insightful, and possessed an integrity that the company had sorely lacked. She celebrated her team's successes, took personal responsibility for setbacks, and fostered an environment where the best ideas, not the loudest voices, won. The stock of Lilly Innovations began to creep back up then, to climb steadily. The tech world, initially skeptical, began to watch with admiration. She was not just a story. She was a success. One crisp autumn afternoon, nearly a year after her life had been torn apart and remade, Amelia was at a park with Lilly. Her daughter, now a happy, toddling 1-year-old, was chasing pigeons on the grass, her laughter echoing in the clear air. Amelia sat on a bench, watching her, a soft, genuine smile on her face. Her life was full. Not easy, but full. Then she saw him. Across the great lawn, she saw a man who looked like a faded photograph of Julian Croft. He was thinner. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame, and his shoulders were slumped in a posture of permanent defeat. He was alone, just staring at the duck pond with vacant eyes. He must have felt her gaze, because he looked up, and for a long, silent moment, their eyes met across the distance. She saw everything in his expression. The shock, the burning shame, the flicker of impotent rage, and a deep, bottomless well of regret. He was a ghost, haunted by the life he had thrown away. Amelia felt nothing. No anger, no desire for revenge, not even pity. It was the quiet, profound indifference one feels for a stranger, for a chapter that has been read closed and placed back on the shelf. He had no power over her. He was simply a man on a bench. She broke eye contact first, turning her attention back to the only thing that mattered. Lilly, she called out, her voice bright and full of love. Come here, sweet girl. Lilly turned, her face lit up with a joyful smile, and toddled on her chubby legs back into her mother's waiting arms. Amelia hugged her daughter tight, burying her face in her soft hair, breathing in the scent of her child. She was home. She was Amelia Hayes, a mother, a survivor, and the CEO of a company built not on a lie, but on a promise to her daughter. She had walked through fire and emerged not burned, but forged. And as she stood up to leave the park, holding her daughter's hand, she walked away from the ghost of her past, without a single backward glance, stepping confidently into the bright, limitless future she had built for them both. Amelia's story is a powerful testament to the fact that true strength isn't about never getting knocked down. It's about what you do when you get back up. She transformed her deepest pain into her greatest power, not through loud, explosive revenge, but through quiet intelligence, meticulous planning, and an unbreakable will. She didn't just leave a toxic marriage. She dismantled an empire built on lies and rebuilt it on a foundation of truth. Her victory wasn't just for herself, but for her daughter Lily, ensuring she would grow up, seeing a mother who was not a victim, but a victor. What do you think about Amelia's path to justice? Was it a calculated revenge or a righteous reclamation? We all face moments of betrayal, big or small, and her story reminds us of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. If this story of survival and ultimate vindication moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of incredible strength. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening.